Alright, so, welcome to what I guess is episode 1 of, just a brief series of video podcast-like things we're going to be doing on a D&D campaign that I've been running for some of my friends.
Tide swallow.
Woo. So, just to start things out, my name's John.
Andy.
You'll see it on the screen in a minute here. We've got the characters and the players' names all set up on there, but yeah, this is basically just going to be a very casual kind of chat about the campaign so far, what everyone's thoughts have been on it, the characters they've made, the stuff that we've done during it. This is essentially the first game that any of us have been in that has gone on as long as it has.
And it's been a long time, too.
Yeah, like, we are 2 weeks away from the 1 year mark on this one. Yeah.
I didn't think it was that long.
Yeah, I forgot to bring that up ahead of time. Part of why I wanted to do this to begin with is because very end of August was when we started playing the first sessions of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, here we are again. Quickly approaching that.
That's crazy. That's
under much different conditions.
So essentially what it was supposed to be was a prologue that ended up turning into a full-on campaign.
Yeah, so just to give a little context to all of this, about a year ago we had gotten together as a group. This is a bunch of people who have known each other from school for years. Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh yeah, it's gonna be one of those kind of videos. But yeah, we all went to college together. A bunch of us went to high school together. And we've always kind of messed around with the idea of doing a D&D campaign. We've tried starting ones in the past, and they kind of fizzled out every time we did it. So this time, one of our friends was going to DM for what ended up being a huge group. I think we've got 6 or 7 regular players, and then 1 or 2 kind of bounce in and out. But yeah, it was quite the undertaking, and unfortunately life sort of got in the way of that. So the original idea was going to be for him to DM a campaign that he was essentially homebrewing with a little help from an existing document that I think came off DM's Guild, for a New World campaign. It would essentially be a bunch of travelers going to a brand new continent that had sprung up just within the last, like, I don't know, maybe year or so.
I think he said within 5 years.
5 years, okay,
yeah.
So yeah.
So it wasn't entirely undiscovered, uncharted.
Some settlements had been set up and everything. There was
colonies.
A little bit of, civilization starting there. But it would be a lot of exploring the wilderness, stuff like that. Yeah, real interesting setting, and I was really fascinated to see where it would go. And then, unfortunately, one thing just led to another, and it never ended up happening.
And one thing about the New World, though, I don't know if he mentioned this to you. He was kind of likening it a little bit. I believe I remember him comparing it to the discovery of the United States.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And how it's, going from England, coming over to the States, and obviously starting with the East Coast, and then gradually
your way westward from there.
So
it's a great concept for a campaign, and I am interested to see it eventually, because we are going to get there at some point.
Yeah.
In the meantime, however, since it seemed like it was going to be a while before we would actually start that, I had offered to just kind of do a prequel campaign with the same characters, just setting up their first day or two in the city that the ship to the New World would be leaving from. Since these were characters getting pulled in from all around the world and everything to basically come together for this voyage, we had them meeting in a city that none of them had ever been to, and leaving from there. The city had no shape, no defined characteristics, didn't even have like a name or anything at the time. So it was a completely blank slate to work with, and it was really fun to just kind of create something out of that.
Yeah, I love world building, which it kind of snowballs because you come up with one idea and then
it's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah, and it kind of just that would be cool. That would be cool. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tideswallow was initially when Joe was going to take over the campaign. Tideswallow was supposed to be just a few sessions.
It was maybe one session at most.
Like chapter 0.
You guys would show up there to the boat, get on the boat, and then you would go.
Yep. And that was just basically so that we could overcome all the get all the characters meeting and we'd already be a unit.
It would be an easy way to introduce everyone's character as far as, okay, so the captain's waiting, who are you? Describe your character as they show up. That sort of thing. And then something was going to happen on the voyage over that would really unite everyone as a cohesive unit. There was essentially going to be a mutiny.
Yeah.
I hint at it a couple times when you guys have tried to find the captain throughout the course of this campaign.
And we still don't know what happened to him.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to him. I'm going to make that up on whatever day you guys end up leaving. But the idea was just that essentially, this captain's a dirtbag and his entire crew hates him.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a mutiny partway through. You guys were going to have to work as a team to kind of survive.
Yeah.
And, it would have been a great way to start a campaign. Instead, what you got was
an even better way.
We'll say it was a different way.
Different way.
All right, essentially tried to set up this city of Tideswallow as a sandbox for you guys to explore. It's one of my favorite ways to establish a campaign is to just throw every possible option at the players and see what they go for. And you guys did not disappoint with that.
Yeah, we kind of threw you for a loop a couple times.
A few times. At least once every session, it seems like.
So. And that's kind of what the party became kind of known for.
It's like most of my DMing has been virtual. I've done a lot of by text stuff and stuff like that, and like Discord and stuff along those lines.
Yeah, me too.
This was the first time that I've played in person with a group that was this, we'll say, outside the box with some of your thinking.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to this later, but there's some stuff that ends up happening, especially the most recent stuff.
Yeah.
That just...
way off the rails.
Yeah, whole new
in some
plot
amazing
tree.
ways. Oh, yeah. There were nights where I essentially just tore up an old idea and had to start over from scratch for the next week.
Which... I imagine that's kind of twofold though, because you kind of put passion into
like
storylines, and then it doesn't go out the way that you want it to. But it's almost like you're. If I were to DM, I think I would be kind of proud of the party. And
this has been one of my favorite experiences DMing so far.
You've been very good at rolling with us on stuff and kind of just letting it grow and expand.
That's honestly kind of part of why I wanted to do this series to begin with, was to give a little more context and background to some of the stuff that's happened, because you, Pat, and Paris have easily been like the most involved in the backstory as far as like messaging me afterwards to find stuff out or to discuss things that happened, stuff along those lines. April, Maggie, Sean, and Matt have all gotten in touch with me about various things before, but it was never as consistent as what you three have done. And it was always fun just discussing it, but there was a lot behind the scenes that you guys never saw or anything. So
see, I always just like I like seeing, like I had been discussing earlier, that I watched Donnie Darko 4 times.
Yeah. So before we started recording, there was a whole discussion about this.
Yeah, I watched the director's cut on its own, and then I watched all the commentaries. And the reason I watched the commentaries is because I like seeing the gears. I like seeing what the director thought this meant, or so like this is going to be an interesting discussion for me, seeing your angle and what you thought. So behind the scenes.
I know we touched on it briefly leading up to this, but if you have any questions about that stuff, just bring them up. I've got my notes here and everything. We can go through any of that.
Yeah.
Most of it's still in my head because I can never stop thinking about this stuff.
I know. That's how I am too.
Yeah.
That's why I said to you, off cast here, you put a lot of thought into the world and framework and stuff like that, and it's like stuff.
A little more than I meant to.
Yeah. And hopefully you're better than I am at actually writing it down.
No, not at all.
Because I got a lot of ideas, and they're all here, and I remember all of them, but I'm always afraid that they're gonna float away because they
Trust me,
go out of
as
focus.
soon as might not be this episode, but when we start going through the DM notes and everything, and the stuff like that I have saved, you'll see just how vague some of it is.
Yeah.
And how about half the characters that you guys have met, I didn't bother writing down their names or anything about them.
Like Gorm.
I didn't have to do it with Gorm because he's an existing character that I
true.
stole, but yeah.
True.
All the other ones, though, yeah. So yeah, I guess let's just jump into this as far as setting first then.
And for the record, I might keep my questions a little bit, like towards the end of the cast here.
Yeah, no
because that's kind of how I wrote my notes. Is the questions are all kind of at the end.
Yeah, basically, if something jumps out at you, feel free to just bring it up. But yeah, so basically, what we set up here was a world where essentially every setting from D&D can exist. We're slowly adding them into a single world as time goes on.
And the world is homebrew.
Yeah.
Right? It's not really...
It's homebrew in the sense that, okay, all these locations from actual existing, like, Forgotten Realms, Exandria, stuff like that, it all exists here.
Yeah.
But it's all thrown together in a way where it all functions as a single world. Which,
So, the way that I see that is... In Marvel Comics, there was this arc called Secret Wars, in I think it was 2015. And in Marvel Comics, there's all these, as you know, alternate universes, and they refer to them as World 616, blah blah blah. In that event, a cataclysmic event happened, temporarily changing the world into all the realities becoming one planet.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little bit like that, where you took parts of existing worlds and kind of just put them into our world in a way that made sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because I don't have that context because DC was always more my stuff if I read anything at all. However, I am a huge Dark Tower fan.
Oh, there you go.
I think has come up
Connective tissue
in the past. And the idea of Midworld, the main setting for that, is essentially bits and pieces of various other realities have shown up in this single dying world.
And there's like threads, right? In
there are parallels to every other, basically every other Stephen King story in some way.
Yeah.
And just that whole idea of, okay, this is a part of reality. Here's some version of it in this world.
And here's a turtle.
And here's a turtle. You know. Yeah, you guys haven't really gotten too far into the gods and everything of this world that got set up, but there's some pretty blatant references throughout.
That's fine.
Yeah, so we'll get to that at some point.
I always say it's fine to draw influence from media that you like, but try not to create carbon copies.
Yeah, so there's a few carbon copies, but we'll get to that eventually.
Well, are they carbon copies, or are the actual like source material in this world?
It could go either way, honestly. I would say with a lot of the so just recently, within the last few weeks, you guys ended up in Waterdeep.
Right.
That's an existing city from D&D, just in general.
Yeah.
It has a lot of history to it. Some of it I knew before setting it up. A lot of it I was learning in between sessions.
Which edition did that come from?
That might be all the way back.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know. But yeah, it is an iconic city from just D&D in general, and it was something that I had written into my character's backstory when I was going to be a player in this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't actually think you guys would ever really visit it, so I didn't really put much thought into it.
It exists in the world, and it can be referenced.
And then something happened about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where you guys just kind of randomly ended up there. Because I may have handed you too much power.
Yeah.
And,
that's what they always say about things like that.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, that'll show up in the notes somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, it is a version of the existing material.
Yeah.
And the same thing would happen if you guys ever visited Teldore or Wildmount.
Yeah.
It'll be our version
Yeah.
of what those ones are.
I mean, that's half the fun. Again, when I mention the Marvel Multiverse, is the fun thing about the alternate realities that I always found, or the worlds, as I said, is just the possibility of this, area of a story being similar enough.
Yeah.
But it because it exists in its own reality now, you can go crazy with it.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what we can do.
Yeah, and that's really the fun of it.
Yeah, and you kind of, like you said, it's taking material from other settings, and changing it in a way that makes it part of our world.
Exactly, and it harkens back to the whole concept of D&D. Like all the rules and everything like that, they are guidelines more than an actual definite have to do it this way.
Yeah.
So just kind of treating the setting the same way. So yeah, basically, getting back to what we were saying, the setting is this, at least where we start at, it's this continent called Veltria, I believe we ended up calling it. The actual name of the continent has come up very few times in the...
yes, mostly talking about Tideswallow.
Yeah, so we'll focus specifically on the city that you guys were isolated to for the majority of this campaign.
And I think that's one interesting, unique aspect of this campaign up until now, very recently, 3 weeks ago, actually, is that we've been contained in one city, and so it's kind of become like a living area where we spend so much time in there.
That's about what I wanted to happen with it. I did give you guys at one point a bigger map of the region around it.
I remember that.
Just in case you wanted to explore more. But you guys pretty naturally stayed within, maybe not the entire confines of the city. You guys did go outside the walls for a bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But still right within that same area.
Very rarely did we really leave or go very far.
Yeah.
If we left, we went to the woods.
Exactly.
To the forest to fight. Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
And then we also went to forgive me, I forget the name of the town in the
Anvil Reach.
Yeah,
it's
Anvil
a
Reach.
dwarven city just built right into the mountain, just to the south of Tideswallow. But yeah, the map will be on screen. You can see that here.
I believe I missed the session that we spent.
Yeah,
there.
Unfortunately, you were out of it for that one.
Yeah.
So the rest of the party essentially only spent one session and some.
At the end of one.
Yeah, it was like the very tail end of one session, a whole session, and then they were out of there for the next one.
Yeah, and I came back and we were gone already.
Yeah. So we got some of what your character did done in just a side chat.
Yeah.
Which, the other thing I should probably clarify, some of the adventure has been, most of it has been in person. Some of it has been done in side chats with just one or two of the characters present. And it's something that I don't know I can really recommend to people to do in their campaign, because it's had mixed effects.
I mean, I like it conceptually because it's like a subplot. It's a little bit like if you know Fire Emblem, how they have the paralogs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So
the problem comes that then certain people in the party are getting more of the story than the rest, and it can get a little confusing depending on what they find out.
They're kind of there for the people that want them.
Exactly.
In a way.
And that's how I was treating it, yeah.
And the other thing with it is it actually, I don't know if you thought about this, but it actually makes the characters a little bit more realistic in that certain characters know specific information. And unless they choose to reveal that, they're the only ones that know.
Absolutely. And that's essentially how I was viewing it.
Yeah.
Just it can lead to some confrontation, let's say, within the group. And just if you are going to do something like that, do it carefully.
I still don't know how Key found Jesus or whatever.
Yeah, no one does. That's specifically between her, Alistair, and another key figure. But you
she went from like not trusting just about anybody to being like, I trust Alistair.
There were some big revelations that happened during her side quest stuff. So we'll get to that when we can get Pat and Paris on here at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have her here to talk about the stuff Key went through specifically.
Yep. That's fine.
But yeah, so yeah, just to get this started, we had, let me see here, a total of 6 primary characters who were all the players in the group. I was going to be a 7th, but like I said, that didn't work out, so we changed it up as time went, added another person here and there as needed. So, just to start off, we had Sean playing Scolier, a half-elf rogue who kind of tried to defy the typical rogue mentality. He was a very lawful character.
Yeah, he went lawful-driven, which was interesting.
Yeah, it was, I think it worked out well for what he was going for.
I always enjoy subversive elements like that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Specifically, if we had made it to the New World, his whole background is about his family being explorers, and essentially they would have been some of the first colonizers for the New World.
And that's another parallel with my character.
Yeah, so those... Yeah, actually, you are not quite next. We had...
Which one?
We will get to you in just a second.
I have plenty to say about
I
Pyres,
figured,
so
yeah.
We'll get to that way later.
Yeah, we'll clear out the others first, just to get that out of the way.
Yep.
Pat and Paris will talk about their characters once they're on here, but we'll give you the slight overview for the time being.
Yeah.
Our friend April was playing Kava, a Dragonborn bard from a small... I guess you could call it a village. It's like a very small conclave of... Dragonborns who are completely separated from the rest of society. They're just kind of isolated in their own self-sustaining community. And she was essentially setting out to find inspiration for a love song that was going to be what she presented her significant other with upon returning.
Her paramour.
Yes. And again, it's a concept for a character that I absolutely love, because not only did she have a love interest back home that she needed to return to at some point, she and Scolier both have living families. They're like the only ones in this group who weren't orphans of some kind.
Yeah.
And like Scolier is incredibly close with some of his family.
Yeah.
Kava, her parents are still alive and everything.
They're normal.
They're totally normal people.
Relationships and no strife.
Then we had Maggie, a
Shannira.
Yeah, a wood elf druid named Shannira Oakenheel. And she was the first character that we introduced who was actually from Tideswallow.
Yeah.
She got added in after the first session, so we wanted something a little different.
I actually forgot about that she wasn't there for the first one.
Yeah, her and Paris both weren't there for the first one, so we added them afterwards. For Shannira, her family essentially has been caring for this city park right in the middle of Tideswallow. Or actually, I guess right in the corner of Tideswallow, now that I'm looking at the map again. It's essentially a little pocket dimension. It looks like just a very small, rundown park from the outside, but as soon as you step through the gates, it is a very large, rundown park.
Yeah.
The entire forest that surrounds it has been essentially burned out and destroyed, but there's still a good bit of life once you get through that.
Well, it's a little bit when you actually go to a park. It's like when you go to a park in real life, and you get there. There's not a big parking lot, and there's not a lot there. But if you go on a hiking trail, all of a sudden You look up, and the only thing you see is nature, and
Yeah.
it's just glorious.
Exactly.
And that it's that to a much grander scale there.
And Shannara also gives us our first connection to what was set up to be the big antagonistic group in all of this. The Court of Eyes, this cult that exists all throughout Tideswallow. At some point in the last 100 years, came through and, just looking for sacrifices and forbidden knowledge and stuff like that, as cults do, ended up murdering her family.
Fuck the court!
And, yeah, essentially her parents died protecting her. They sealed her away in a cave that held a bunch of... I don't want to give too much away, but a bunch of knowledge that the court was after. And essentially,
the scrolls, right?
It was scrolls and tomes, things that
Yeah.
had significant value to them. They essentially hid her away in the cave, sealed it, and concealed it from the court. And after that, Shannara was basically on her own as this hermit in the park, just trying her best to tend to it and go unnoticed by people who might be interested in it. And she did a good job of that for a long time. Then you guys showed up and started drawing all sorts of attention.
Yeah.
After that, we had... We'll skip over Pat's for a moment. We had Key, another late entry who was also from Tideswallow and is our other connection to the court. She was another orphan made by one of the sacrifices. The court, at some point within the last 20 years, kidnapped her father and brother and put them to death during a ritual. Key managed to escape from them after she'd been captured, and was essentially just living as an orphan in the city for a while, until a, we'll say, less than reputable organization recruited her.
Call it a gang. You can call it a gang.
I mean, it is what it is. This organization called the Sunless recruited her, and she has essentially been I guess you could say a mercenary or a kind of a thief for hire ever since.
Yeah.
She worked her way up quite a ways through the organization until she was one of its, maybe not leading members, but definitely one of the higher-ups, and was in very close with its leader, the Silhouette.
I want to know. I want to know about her a lot more.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole episode dedicated to that, I think.
Yeah.
Because she has some interesting ties to the group, and essentially started out as an antagonist, trying to take out a certain member of our party here. Then we have Pat, who is playing Phalanx, a Revenant Grave Cleric of Kelmvor.
That got complicated.
Oh boy, did it.
And off the rails like
I think
everything
Pat
else.
will also have his own episode dedicated to the bizarre story that is Phalanx. But the short end of it is he essentially said to make up a backstory for him. So I did.
You want to play a skeleton?
He wanted to play a skeleton. He had that idea from the moment we started.
Yeah.
We eventually worked it into what's essentially an arch-vial from Doom, where he got a little more flesh and some very useful fire-based powers.
I had no idea that was what that was.
Oh yeah. Heavily inspired. But yeah, he was essentially an amnesiac that was found on board the ship that you guys were supposed to take to the New World, locked away in a crate.
In a box, yeah.
Yeah. Key and one of the NPCs you guys started having dealings with went in to rescue him after he just let out this massive psychic scream at one point.
Yeah.
And alerted basically everything in a 2-mile radius to his presence. And that brings us to Pyre Raidwin.
We're not going to do Alistair? You don't want to do Alistair yet?
Not yet.
Alright.
I figured we'd go through the actual players first.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh. What? So Pyre is his class is a fighter. He's a dragonborn. He's red scaled, and he's the adopted son of a baron, Baron Raedwyn, who also has a trueborn son named Ludo, and he was rescued as a baby during what looked to be a sacrifice.
Yeah, there was some kind of ritual
sort
going on.
Yeah, and he's being held up to a pyre, which is kind of where his name came from. That aspect of naming him was a little bit like the I don't know if you know this, but my cat Lumpy that I used to have.
No, you didn't mention this part.
Yeah, basically we came up with a stupid nickname for our cat because he was kind of fat.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it kind of just stuck. We named him Lumpy. So that's kind of where the idea for Pyre's name came from.
So Baron Raedwyn and the rest of his crew just sort of started calling him Pyre. Okay.
Yeah. So there's and then it just kind of stuck. It's like, why not?
Hey, fair enough.
So now the thing about Pyre is, his father is on top of being a baron, also a captain of a crew who participate in a little bit similarly to Scolier's family adventuring.
Yeah.
It's a guild.
There was a lot of exploration, a lot of just going out on missions that would be essentially too dangerous for normal people to handle.
And it's kind of got a competitive tilt to it, quality to it, where there's different crews and they compete with each other. And there's different ways to get into the guild, and it's usually either you need to have past military experience or be of royalty, and you appoint a captain on top of that, or otherwise just skill, basically.
Yeah, there you go.
But you need to essentially prove yourself in some way.
Yeah, and that's kind of been an essential part of who Pyre is.
Yeah.
Too,
So he's kind of, his goal is basically, outside of his main drive, is to prove himself worthy of the name that he holds.
Yep. And not just the name that he holds. What came with something special along with him too.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Showed up in the first session.
I'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But let's see here. Gotta go through my notes for a second.
Yeah. So I will say, while you're doing that, the last ones on the list, they're Alistair Verse and Melody Shadefang. Alistair was originally going to be my character when I was playing. Since probably until about halfway through this year, we still thought the New World idea was going to happen at some point, and we would just wrap up the Tideswallow campaign and move on.
And it kind of just kept on getting lengthened.
It was. But since we still thought that was going to happen, I kept Alistair around as a primary NPC just so he could show up in case I did become a player again. But as time went on, we kind of phased him out as even having the possibility of joining in as a real player character. And he's basically just stuck around as your guys', we'll say, your contact to certain organizations and maybe a guiding force where needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Melody was just his adopted daughter that he had with him.
Yeah. So the thing, bouncing back to Pyre.
Yeah, go for it.
His motivation is essentially one of vengeance, because as he grew up, he was raised alongside Ludo, and basically what ended up happening between the two of them is Ludo started becoming very jealous of what he perceived to be favoritism.
Yeah, so definitely bitter towards Pyre about it.
And Pyre's not really one to move away from a fight. So basically what ended up happening is a rivalry was formed of about a 60-40. So 60% Ludo,
Yeah.
I hate you, I'm jealous of you. Pyres like, hey man, fuck you.
Yeah, kind of just pushing back where
yeah.
needed, but it wasn't really the primary thing on his mind.
No, he was just kind of into the adventuring stuff,
Yeah.
and he was a lot more purely interested in that for the exploration, whereas Ludo was motivated by more vanity things.
Yeah,
like,
I would say I'll bring it up again when more of Pyres Story comes to light, but it was very much a liquid snake versus solid snake type thing.
I don't know. But,
Yeah, trust me, I know. No matter how many times I've told you to play Metal Gear.
I know.
But yeah.
And then basically what ended up happening is when the New World cropped up, of course, being adventurers, that crew wanted to pursue that and be, one of the first people there. Why wouldn't they?
Sure, exactly.
But at this point, the Baron was getting old. He was a little bit weaker. His senses were kind of leaving him. And he kind of felt it was time to pass on his titles.
Yeah, it seemed like the right moment to pick a successor.
Yeah, of Baron and Captain. His original plan was to split the titles.
Yeah. Make one son.
Yeah. Make one, one of those, and then when that was revealed that that Pyre would be chosen in that way, Ludo. What ended up happening is Ludo ended up murdering their father, or that's what it seemed to be.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, Pyre was on the run. His own friends were in the crew. I didn't mention that. He has an outcast friend group.
Yeah, so it's a nice amalgamation of kind of not the most common sorts of races that you would find working together.
It's weird. It's definitely weird.
It is an interesting bunch of characters.
Yeah. I actually got that written.
Oh yeah, if you have the specifics there. 'Cause
yeah.
Like I was saying, my notes are a little vague on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I didn't really... I kept on... That was one of those things I kept on meaning to give you, and I kind of just...
I figured if you didn't, I would just make it up as we went.
Yeah.
From there.
So, basically, some of his friends in that group were... Antis is another orphan, is very similar to Pyre. He was rescued by Baron Raidwin, and... He's an Aarakocra, and he's about the same age as Pyre.
Yeah.
The thing with him is that when he was rescued, his wings were missing, so he couldn't fly, which is an innate ability of the Aarakocra. It's part of their identity.
It's a rough thing to have to deal with for someone of that race.
His thing is, he's motivated by... He was raised by a group of wizards, and through his studies... found out, hey, I can still fly, because that's a wizard's ability.
Learn how to do it.
Yeah. So that was his drive, and he's kind of like the Lancer / second man.
Makes sense.
To Pyre and his little crew.
Yeah.
His side crew. There's a Warforged bard named Oblung.
I love that.
And it's a weird name, Oblung. And that's for the noise that she would make. Very commonly, Oblung, and because they're robotic, and their goal was basically to identify themselves and kind of find their way. And unknown age, seems to be very old.
Makes sense.
Female ?
Yep.
Sings of adventure similarly to April's character. Kind of in charge of logging the journey. There's another... Sinfis is a paladin. He's human. Kind of shining knight archetype. Oddly enough, enjoys partying. As opposed to the shining knight image.
Of course.
Wears a handsome mask during adventuring, so that he can kind of party without his mask. No one knows who he is when he's with the crew. He's a hero, kind of, woo,
I don't know what you meant for him to look like, but ever since you said that, I've always just kind of pictured him as Lucatiel from Dark Souls.
He's a little bit like...
like, not in personality, but definitely in terms of the mask.
I believe the character's name was Arthur from Fire Emblem. the blonde guy that's like, "Grr."
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how I pictured him.
Yeah, the medieval superhero type.
Yeah, he's like, "Grr." But he's kind of, yeah. So, there's Keys, who's a kobold, fancies himself Pyres' closest friend, despite not being his best friend. Yeah. That would go to the Aarakocra character. He's a rogue. He doesn't speak most common, but he does understand it. There's only 2 words that he says, and that's sweet and keys, which is where his name came from.
Makes sense.
His I don't know what the hell I wrote here. He loves treasures and sweets and
there we
anything
go.
like that kind of. Like, ooh, shiny! Kind of, instant gratification type.
I'm not gonna lie, I was really looking forward to playing that one at some point, just because I adore kobolds. Yeah, they're my favorite race in D&D.
He's kind of something of a mascot for that outcast group that he's got.
Perfect.
Not incredibly useful, but he's there.
He's there.
Then there's Malia, who is a female shaman, moon elf, which is not a common race in D&D, but it is in one of the books.
I will take your word for it.
Don't recall which one, but she's there.
Okay.
Her village was destroyed in fire. Mm-hmm. She's a lone survivor type, but she's also amnesiac, which is a little bit typical, but there's a reason for that.
Yep.
And she was kind of inspired. She was initially closed off. She became inspired by Oblong's goal of self-discovery because of the identity of a blank slate. Yeah. As well as exploring a world that is new in every way, every sensation, every place you go, there's something new.
Yeah, so this is a genuine type of amnesia. She didn't just forget, oh, there goes my identity.
Gone.
No, there goes everything.
Yeah. It's like being reborn as a baby's mindset in the body that you have currently. Yep. Like, it's insane to think about that. And she has a possible connection to Pyre, and that's his friend group.
Nice. Unfortunately, they haven't actually shown up in the campaign yet, but give it a couple weeks. We'll see what happens. You guys are going to be out on the high seas pretty soon, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically what ended up... I just want to finish up Pyre here, because I feel like I'm taking up...
Oh, no, this is pretty much a Pyre episode as far as I'm concerned at this point.
His motivation, like I said, is vengeance-driven, because of the Ludo situation, but... Whereas Ludo, likewise, is pursuing him. The way that I see Ludo is he thinks Pyre did it, and that's kind of an outside perspective.
So there is an interesting little mystery going on here as far as someone killed Baron Raidwin. There's no 2 ways about that. It was definitely a murder. And both brothers suspect it was the other one that did it. Yeah,
because they both think that the Baron... What the hell was that? That the Baron...
yeah, that was weird.
You heard that, right? It was like a vibration or something. They both think that the other killed him because they think that the Baron was like, you're going to get both.
Yep.
You're going to get both.
Yep.
And it wasn't going to be that way.
No, but they had no idea.
No.
The Baron hadn't shared that information with anyone.
So, Ludo, conversely to Pyre, whereas Pyre knows he's just trying to get revenge.
Yeah.
He sees, he kind of masks it as justice.
Yeah.
But he really just you killed father. Like, why wouldn't I?
You have to die.
Yeah, for that. And
meanwhile,
Ludo kind of sees it. The way that I kind of pictured him is, despite the fact that he's arrogant, he's brash, he's kind of a shithead, he sees it very much as justice.
Yes.
He sees it very much as what the right thing to do is.
And just to fill that in, now that you guys have ended up finally running into Ludo in the campaign, I can give a little more context to that. Since Pyre left Port Daramir, Ludo has been in a position of power that he was not ready for.
No.
And while that arrogance is still there, he's had to mature real fast as far as getting rid of some of those bad habits of just hot-headedness and everything. So within the last month or so that you've been away from the port, he has been developing into an actual leader of some kind, and has a very definite sense of justice. He very much wants to bring you back to face punishment for this, but he doesn't necessarily want to outright kill you or anything.
And I would imagine that he still feels the very same exact rage that Pyre does, but is using it as a driving force in a different way.
Very much so. He's also found a new mentor that is kind of helping him hone that vengeance into something more useful.
Yeah.
A real drive for justice rather than just blind, gotta kill you.
Go get him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there was something
Pyre
else.
and Ludo have been an interesting dynamic to watch unfold, even though Ludo himself has only been present for a few weeks now.
He's kind of been a constant,
That's just it. He has been there.
thing that's coming.
Yeah.
And it's...
His influence has been there in the background for a good portion of this campaign now.
The fun thing about Pyre, though, is he's very much the typical good guy, does the right thing because it's the right thing.
Oh, yeah.
But the fun thing with him is that when it does come to his brother, he doesn't give a shit about that anymore.
There is a darkness there.
Yeah,
that you let that out in one of the in the first confrontation you guys had.
Yeah.
And that went places.
Yeah. So sometimes Pyre does have episodes where, we'll call them episodes.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Just,
where he kind of just gets taken over in a way.
Let's loose a bit.
Yeah.
And
And
a little bit of rage in there.
this is a, physical description of the guy. He's 7'3". He's over 200 pounds of muscle.
Boy.
And he can breathe fire. So
Big,
don't piss him off.
scarred up Dragonborn.
Yeah.
With pretty heavy armor. Massive greatsword.
Yeah, that's the main thing I forgot to mention was when he had to go on the run. The Baron gave him the family sword, which was something that wasn't typically used for battle because it's so heavy, and
it was more a ceremonial piece and a show of strength.
Yeah, and there's various runes on it, so it's obviously a very important item. But
I'll throw the description up on here so you guys can see it.
Yeah.
But,
But with Pyre's size, he can use it easy.
Yeah. He was the perfect one to be wielding it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Baron rarely ever actually used it, he could still, if he needed to, wield it.
But it was very much an heirloom sword. It was very
Yes.
much symbolic of the family line.
Meanwhile, Pyre's just been swinging that thing around.
Yeah.
Just recklessly.
Yeah, destroying faces.
And it works.
And that's kind of, that's another, like I said, that's another thing about him. So again, 7'3", over 200 pounds of muscle, heavy armor, giant ass sword. Don't piss him off.
Yep.
Kind of character.
Yeah.
And sometimes he does get pissed off, and it's not pretty.